car feels good. Today we're behind the wheel of the 2020 Honda Civic Si. In a lot of ways, it's Honda's answer to the fan favorite VW GTI, but it's also a sport compact legend in its own right. And that rivalry is still hot today. But we'll get back to that in a little bit. For now, let's pull over and see what we're working with under hood. Now, the 2020 Honda Civic Si makes 205 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque from this. Its 1.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine. Now that seems a little small for this class, but trust me, it's better than it sounds. With a healthy mid-range of torque and a willingness to rev at the top end that I just find delightful from Honda's engines. Now, that power reaches the road via a 6-speed manual transmission with an almost painfully precise shifter and a really nice light clutch. There's also a limited slip differential in there, metering the torque between the two contact patches. Now, the ratios are a little bit lower for 2020, which makes for a more responsive drive, but it also means there's a tad bit more drone on the highway, but not a whole lot more. And I should also mention there's no automatic transmission option for the Si and no DCT, which I don't really care that much about because this is almost as perfect of a manual transmission as you can ask for at this price point, but it bears mentioning. The suspension department is staffed by a multi-link rear setup and McPherson struts at the front. And at all four corners, we've got adaptive dampers that go from firm to really firm with a touch of a button on the console. Now, rolling stock consists of standard 18-inch wheels shot in 235 width all seasons, or like we've got here, an optional upgrade to summer tires. For just $200, checking the box for the stickier rubber is definitely a worthwhile option. The 10th generation Civic's strongest suit has always been its well-tuned chassis, and short of the Type R, the Si is probably the best example of that. The steering has a really good weight to it. It feels nice and tight. The handling is very precise, which makes it very easy to position this car where you want it in your lane in pretty much every phase of a turn, from the braking to the positioning yourself at the apex to the accelerating out, has a really nice precision to it. Now, pretty much every part of the performance benefits from the light clutch and the rev-happy engine, which makes blipping downshifts really easy, and upshifts as well. And the way that this shifter sort of falls magnetically into gear is extremely satisfying. It's a great car to drive around in stop-and-go traffic, even with the manual transmission. Overall, it feels like Honda has tuned the performance of the Civic Si to be the best possible on-the-street driving car that it could provide for this price point. Now, relative to Volkswagen's GTI though, it's down around 20 horsepower and about 60 pound-feet of torque, which you don't really notice when you're chucking this thing around the corner, partially because the chassis dynamics of the Civic just feel much more engaging. It's a more alive car in your hands than the GTI is. On the other hand, there's also the fact that the engine is more rev-happy, which kind of gets your pulse going a little bit. So I haven't really noticed that I'm down power. On the other hand, around town, the GTI's meteor torque curve makes it a much more relaxed daily driver for those times when you're in stop-and-go traffic. The fact that you can get it with a dual-clutch transmission also makes it a little easier to live with. The GTI is also a much more premium vehicle with better interior build quality, nicer options, and more. On the other hand, it's a much more expensive vehicle than this, starting at around $2,000 more than the Civic Si does for a comparably equipped vehicle. Meanwhile, other parts of the Si get 2020 updates that make the vehicle a little bit easier to live with. Things like LED headlamps that make the exterior design look a little bit better, or an upgrade to our 7-inch infotainment system that includes a volume knob and physical controls, things that are just really nice to have. Now, I should mention that there is no OEM navigation option on the Civic Si, but with standard Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, I don't really care. I'm probably going to be using my phone most of the time anyway. The 2020 Honda Civic Si starts at $25,000, whether you go coupe or, like we've got here, the sedan. Factor in destination charges and that $200 tire upgrade that I recommended, and you're looking at around $26,000 delivered. That, combined with its slightly sharper handling and performance, makes it, I believe, the better sport compact value for your dollar, even though I still think that the VW is the better car overall. Now, I know you've got opinions and you can't wait to share them with us, so leave them in the comments below. Which do you prefer, the Volkswagen or the Honda here? On your way out, maybe check out our full review of the Volkswagen GLI sedan, a competent vehicle that I believe deserves your attention also in this class.